Manever I say ma PENDREAM TV. PENDREAM TV there, osia dem yopo.
How do you call it? About this BOG matter. So they say that, ladies and gentlemen of the press, members of the public, distinguished colleagues, good afternoon. Just before midnight on Thursday, April 2026, the Bank of Ghana finally publishes 2025 audited financial statements on its website. Since then, the minority has examined accounts line by line, page by page, all 136 pages of it. We have also studied with care the propaganda attempt that preceded it by the NDC party, but that's it. For the politicians would look at that as well. So at some point on the show, we may have to speak to a member of the minority who is also a member of the finance committee. Taisa was supposed to have spoken to us earlier today, but we struggled to get through to him via Zoom. And so at some point in the conversation, depending on how it goes, we would speak to him via Zoom. He's in England at the moment. He's an MP for the Sakanlerigo constituency and also a member of the finance committee. He's also a certified accountant. He's also a finance and an economics person who's also issued a statement in reaction to what the minority has said. And so at some point we'll speak to him. But let me start with Professor Isaac Boadi. Prof. Now, no, let me start with you. Let me start with you.
I met him here.
Let me start with you. You know, I like to start with people in academia. So I have a certain bias for you. So, Prof, I mean, why has this matter become so topical? Because you see, there are two schools of thought. There's one school of thought that says that, yes, the macro indicators are looking good. The economy is better today. But we must also be very interested in how we've been able to do this, i.e. the role of the central bank. Okay. And that if the central bank has made a loss, we must be concerned. And then there's another school of thought that says, no, look, the best judge of economic policy has to do with the benefit, impact, and outcome, not necessarily the cost of it. So forget about what it costs, what we had to do to achieve what we have achieved, but focus more on what has been achieved. I don't know which of the schools of thought you belong. I mean, what do you make of this back and forth and so on and so forth? What from where you sit, what do you think? How do you see things?
Well, good morning. Good morning to your viewers as well. When I came, I saw my good friend, Jackson here. And I must say thank you. He was on campus the last time.
Okay.
UPSA.
Adjunct lecturer?
No, he delivered a powerful lecture there. The Dean's program.
What topic was that?
The exchange rate, something on...
It was about the long-term sustainability of the city and the role of the gold board.
Wow. That's interesting.
Oh, you need to get the video.
Yes.
Very interesting.
Please send me the speech. But isn't it interesting? I mean, actually, a coincidence.
Yeah.
You know, because that's what we're talking about today, basically. Anyway.
So, thank you, Jackson.
Thank you.
Very, very insightful conversation on that day. Moro, we are focusing on a very sensitive area of conversation that we need to take our political lenses off. And those who are watching, those who are hearing us must take their political. If you do that, you won't have a better conversation on this whole discussion.
Right.
What has been it's been the most topical issue, you said. Why? Because events before the publication of the results, several issues had happened. And therefore, we're all waiting to hear the numbers and see how the figures will look like.
Okay.
In fact, before the publications, somewhere last year, we had several injections into the system, dollars. There was one event for something that happened during the same year,
right,
where we had depletion of our gold. Some our reserves were sold. And we were all curious about the justifications for the sale of the gold, the reserve that we had. And if you permit me, I can quote exactly what the central bank governor said.
Okay.
That we had in excess of gold reserves as a country beyond the threshold. We were hitting almost 40 tons or so, whilst our peers were hovering around 20 to 30 or so. So those were the reasons given by the governor for the sale. So you understand that when you are to get a performance of that aspiration within the year,
Right.
people will be curious and will need to know what the numbers should look like, and then we can interrogate. You also made a point about we should concentrate on the benefits or the outcome, what we are having, as against seeing those numbers.
Yeah.
If we made a loss, and so what?
Yes.
I mean, but life, I mean, we are having good time as a country because we've seen inflation taking a nosedive. We've seen exchange rates having a very good account. So we don't need to worry. But then, I must be honest that I've been on the other platform, I've said it that several times. For a bank, a central bank to declare a loss, it's not in the news. It's not in the news. Check your records. That I think England, European central banks, other banks, central banks have equally recorded losses within the same time frame. So for me, it's not a major problem.
Okay.
The issues we have, or the issue we have, will be the causes of the losses we are talking about.
Okay.
That is a fundamental thing that we have to talk about now. Of course, the Bank of Ghana has a role to play in terms of ensuring macroeconomic stability, price stability, financial stability. These are the core mandate of central bank that we know, beyond, other ones that we know. So fine. So let's now come back to the report, which have been on media space for some days now. It is just like a child who had come back from secondary school or university, and the parents want to understand how the child performed. In doing that, the mother and the father will be sitting closely, watching the report or interpreting the numbers. Look at the entire report, the financial statement of 2025. In fact, it presents a deeply troubling, for me, position or a picture of a central bank in a sustained financial distress. That's what I see.
Okay.
A mental picture of the entire report. A sustained financial distress. But you see, if you check the entire report from the directors, they try to give you hopes or some optimisms of our future.
Right.
That it's not any major problem that we should be worried about.
Right.
But I also think that if you check critically the report, I see systematic failures. I see policy-induced losses, and I also see a deteriorating balance sheet. So if you subject this into discussion, these are the things that you see. But let me be quick to also point out that in assessing the performance of a student or an administrator, you don't always be looking for negatives. That's wrong. Look at some of the positives, and then you can be fair with your judgment. Remember the first day when the central bank, the governor was sworn in, he made a profound statement that his issue, he was going to tackle the negative equity of the bank and ensure that we return to profits. Check the video.
Right.
Profound statement from him. So we understood him clearly from day one. When he assumed office, he did something that was commendable. In fact, all the first MPC meeting, after the meeting, he published the entire decisions of the members, one by one. Commendable. But along the line, he stopped. I don't know why. But if he's listening to me, it was a very good decision, very good practice that must be sustained, of publishing each of the members' reports and the statement. Coming back to the report, anytime you pick financial statements, don't be quick to look at the numbers. What you have to do is to go through the auditors, see the highlights first. Because they will give you highlights. They will give you auditors' report, and they will give you directors' report before you even go into the numbers. So you can understand the wisdom or the rationale of some of these people. Let's go up to the highlight before we talk about the auditor's report. Total operating income jumped almost 136% from 22 billion, from 9 billion to 22. So we jumped almost 136. Excellent. We'll interrogate that later. Operating expenses also went up 100% to 37 billion. Now, if you look at the net loss for the year, we recorded 15 billion, and that's what minority also came out to. But we'll come back to. I'm just giving the report as it is. Then we have 64% from last 2024 to 2025. Then total assets of the bank stood at 237, a jump. Then total liability stood at 333 billion, giving you a net equity in terms of the bank portfolio. I mean, not the total group for the bank, because they often give you the bank statement, performance, they give you the group. So we are looking at 96. Now, it tells you that this bank is insolvent. A clear picture of what it tells you. It tells you 96 billion tells you that, Moro, if you sell all the things you have to pay what you owe, you still cannot pay this amount of money. It's still there to be paid. So that is a typical scenario that I can give. Having said this, now you can look at the auditor's report. They have KPMG as the auditor. Now go to the auditor's report, the paragraph. There's a paragraph, I can't quote the exact page for you. The auditors, they wrote something here. The external auditors flagged that financial statements are prepared under Bank of Ghana Act, which depart from IFRS in critical areas. I don't know if you understand.
I get it. I follow.
Yeah. The auditor's own admission is that these statements may not be suitable for another purpose. This is what, and you need to ask why the departure from the traditional way of reporting, because we know the standard that we are using, which should be recognized by any other international bodies. When I prepare my financial statement here, and you are reading, you should understand it if you are not even in Ghana. Those are the standards. And we know the various standards that we have. But we are looking at international accounting standard, which now is moved to IFRS, and part, I think, 21 or so. And 21, 9, 7, and I'm sure 4, they linked. They are together in terms of how we report losses, forex accounting. They give us a clear idea. But the auditor will give you first information that we are departing this time around. Maybe you should be curious to find out several reports that we have prepared. Do they mimic the same thing that we can understand? But for this one, this is what we are interrogating. So what it means is that these departures may direct comparison with other international banks. Impossible. You cannot compare this report to any other central bank. That's all that they're trying to say.
What's the standard practice?
The standard practice that if you're treating the AIS, which is the 21 or so, reports or your profits should be declared and be reported by your P&L or the comprehensive income statement.
Okay.
That is the fundamental thing.
Right.
But now they tell us, in some critical areas, they are departing from the normal practice. Okay. You ask. So one area is gold revaluation. They will depart from gold revaluation. They will depart from FX gains and losses. And they will depart from foreign securities. What it means is that when your currency gains strength, your foreign or financial asset you hold, for instance, your FX, your currency, your gold and your SDR, your special drawing for IMF, will deteriorate because you have seen an appreciation in your currency. Therefore, when you are reporting and you have losses, you should be able to capture all these losses and transfer them into your balance sheet. That's what we know. But now the auditor tells us we are departing from that practices. We want to take certain portion, one part, which has to do with the forex gains and losses. And that is where we had a figure of 5.4 included in the P&L. So that is the basic. Let's hold on. And let's now interrogate the statement from directors to stakeholders. These are the few things they read. Directors' report contained 5 major areas where the frame is challenged by us, our institute. 1, they talked about going concern. They talked about policy solvency claim. They talked about gold purchase program. They talked about salarization cost, and then revaluation losses, directors. The first claim they made on going concern, they said the director asserted that bank will remain a going concern based on projected macroeconomic recovery and recapitalization MOU with the Minister of Finance, signed January 6, 2025. We challenge this assertion. Why? You tell us that it's a going concern. If a going concern is to be assumed, then we expect what your assets should always be greater than your liability. So you turn into an equity position. But the figures you reported, you cannot claim it's a going concern. That's the first thing. The other thing is that he said it's going concern based on MOU with the Minister of Finance. They signed an MOU, Ministry of Finance, that there will be a capital injection to help resuscitate the bank because of their level. So if you want to tell us your going concern is based on MOU, MOU is just an agreement. It's just an agreement between you and the Minister of Finance. And you see, it's not a binding one. And this will take a 7-year horizon before you can even talk about this actualization of this MOU. So you cannot claim this is, a going concern. 2, they also said in the document, directors, policy solvency claim. Policy solvency claim. Before we even come to numbers, how do you make this such a statement? Policy solvency. It means that you are solvent. You don't have a problem. Now, you have a net policy solvent of 5 billion. Right? You cannot say this. Let's look at this. 9.5 billion gold sales income as one-off. One-off. Back that one off. Completely you are gone.
Right.
Now, if you want to say you are solvent, then we have a problem with this statement. All right. There was something that is also fundamental we need to know. That the purchase agreement. Let's talk about the OMO operations. OMO operations. You spent 16 billion for salarization. What is the meaning of that? And I'm sure your viewers sometimes need to understand some of the technical words when they put out there. I give money to you because of some other reasons. You have a lot of funds with you. In attempt of collecting those funds, I cannot come to your house and pick the money. I must go through bank as a central bank to collect the money because my policy is reduce inflation. Because when I leave people to have more money in their hands without production, we have a problem. So in attempt of doing this, Central bank decided to contact some institution, the bank floats, and then in that regard, be able to collect funds from them. In the process of retrieving those money is a serialization, and it attracts a cost. And that cost amounted to 16 billion. And the total amount that they collected was about 93 billion. The total. The 16 happens to be the cost of retrieving those funds from them. And then its component, the actual sum of money, stood about 90. So when you do that, your liability. So the figure we are recording at 330 something, 90 something thousand happens to the Elmo figure that came because of a policy. That's why I said it's a policy-induced losses. Your attempt is to reduce inflation. In doing that, you need to do OMO. It's not the first time a governor done before. The other time, the figure was about 8 billion. Now it's gone to 16. It's not curious. If you keep injecting funds into dollars, into the system, you create the city, and you have more money into the system, that obviously you find another way to retrieve them. In retrieving, you spend that money. What it means is that your policy to targeting inflation or reducing it is not working. It's costing you more than the attempt of retrieving the money. My challenge is that even the institutions that, were targeted, for me, we should write an RTI. Let's find out these institutions, how much they got. Because for me, I'm worried. With that quantum, the cost of civilization, huge. I've heard other bodies who have claimed that we should, the 9.5 billion spent as a result of reduction in our gold reserve into the system. If it's a practice of an administration, I don't have a problem. But Moro, are you not curious, surprised to know that the very day this issue came out, the sector or the governor said, there's no problem. IFPP, we questioned that no, you don't need to deplete this reserve. You know the reason they gave? They said, we are doing this because we had an excess of our reserves, which we are not using for anything. Our peers, they don't have what we have. They are hovering around 2030. So there was a need to reduce. We didn't know. Now it's come to show that the reduction was to help balance the book. Because we got 9.5 billion to clean the books. Take that component off. We strip naked. I am concerned about the reasons the governor gave us. It shall come clear to tell us, because you would have seen your half-year report to see your performance. So they knew the performance. So the sale was just to help reduce the losses. For me, that's because if he gave that reason, those reasons, we question, we query, we wrote a lot of statements. Today, this is what we see. So, Moro, we did some diagnosis text on the entire financial statement. But let me quick to add, there's nothing wrong for a central bank to declare losses. Let me be honest. The fundamental problem we have, tell us the rationale for the losses. And for central bank to declare a loss, about 3 things or so should have occurred. One is inflation crisis of a country. Then you can tell me, I made a loss because we're targeting. Go back and check the numbers. Before 2024, we stood, I think the highest we had gone was 54 inflation, if you remember.
Yes, that was in 2022.
Was huge. Can you tell me the reasons why? If you go into the system, the reason, you understand. We're not happy with that performance. But it had dropped to 23 or so. Halved before the year ended and administration took over. It was halved. So I'm talking about inflation crisis, situation where it will warrant or we can even think. So when you see the projection, taking a nosedive, and administration takes over from 23, reduces it to what? It came all the way. Today, it is 3.2.
Yeah, 3.2, yes.
Good. Another condition is where you can say that there's an exchange rate or currency instability. The old administration had their own time. The horse has bolted. So now what do? You drop the exchange rate. The 2024 was about 14%, 14 to the CD, to a dollar. Another situation where you can think that if you declare loss, yes, acceptable. When we have situations like the COVID, the whole world. And let me also make this statement, that the existence of central banks are not there, in quotes, to make profits, but to ensure they have credibility. But if you depart from a standard practice being observed across the globe, where are you going to talk about? How are you going to talk about credibility here? That's my concern.
Right. Mr. Jackson, you've listened to the perspectives that he shared on this matter. I want to know what your take.
My take is
on this
matter.
matter.
You're in trouble this morning because I'm going to debate my good prof a bit today. You see,
It happens once in a while.
I will start with this. I mean, there's several issues we should be talking about, but I'll start with this issue of IFRS. And the IFRS issue is interesting. Why? Because institutions like us, who are governed, I'm talking about DLEX, who are governed by the central bank, all work to, we have to report strictly by IFRS standards. So it is, the first question is, why shouldn't the central bank also report to IFRS standards? But then research reveals something very interesting. Do you know how many central banks in the world report to IFRS standards? 2. 4 reporting to IFRS standards. 2. It is the South African Reserve Bank and the Central Bank of Kenya. 2. Do you know how many of them work to some modification of the IFRS? 4. Who are those 4? The European Central Bank, the Bank of England, the Reserve Bank of New Zealand, and guess who the 4th one is? The Central Bank of Ghana. So now, the rest of the central banks and the reserve banks all do not work to IFRS standards. Kenya and South Africa are striking in that they insist on working because they believe there's the need for credibility in markets. It's so important. The 4 of us left, including Ghana, work to modified IFRS standards. Reserve Bank of the US, etc., etc., all the way to China, back, forth, whatever central bank you can think about. They have their own standards. So the fact that we don't work to IFRS standards is not a crime. Looking at our at the world, at the global issue. And why don't we work to IFRS standards? Because there is an issue that there's central banks, first of all, they are non-profit. So that gives them, because they have other objectives apart from pure profit. Two, they operate with large amounts of gold and other forex that are subject to revaluation. And in fact, it is the revaluation issue that leads people to say, people to claim that we don't want that revaluation, those revaluations, to create profit volatility, that one year we are up, the other year we are down. And so we have to be cautious. Now, so what you have in Ghana is not, in fact, it is in the top tier of how central banks operate, rather than the other way around. And so, even though we are not operating to IFRS standards, peer comparison says, of all the central banks in the world, Ghana is in the top 6 with regards to IFRS reporting. And that's very important. So this, I'm very hesitant in making this IFRS issue the really big deal. Because you see, one of the challenges you have is this. I own this bottle of water. Good. Today, right, this bottle of water is worth 2 cedis. Tomorrow, it's 3 cedis. I still have the bottle of water, but that change can be looked at in multiple ways. And because the central banks hold such large amounts central banks hold such large amounts of gold, other assets. That's why this modification of IFRS standards comes in. So I'm hesitant. I would say we're even doing better than most of our peers. Now, to go to this second issue, which is policy solvency.
Okay. Now back to the
IFRS.
The IFRS matter.
Okay. You don't want me to surge?
No, just a quick one. I'm reading the minorities press conference, portion of it. And I would be glad if you can help me appreciate what the minority is saying. Now, it says some of you may ask, how can the headline loss appear so much smaller than the underlying loss? The answer is in the basis of accounting itself. And it is flagged in the audited documents by KPMG, the new auditors. And I'm bringing this up because of the modified IFRS matter that you raised. Now, it says that it's a KPMG draws attention to Note 2AI and right, and I quote them directly. Now, it says that it's a KPMG draws attention to Note 2AI and right, and I quote them directly. The consolidated and separate financial statements are prepared in accordance with the group's own accounting policies. As a result, the consolidated and separate financial statements may not be suitable for another purpose. Our opinion is not modified in respect of the matter. So this is the KPMG talking. Now, translated into plain language, the accounts are not prepared on full international financial reporting standards. They are prepared on the bank's own internal framework. KPMG could not say prepared in accordance with IFRS. Do you get the point I'm trying to make?
Yes, but no central, the only 2 central banks that do so.
So why is KPMG raising this issue?
KPMG is what KPMG is telling you is that this set of accounts have not been prepared so that you can go out and compare them to, say, UPSA or Zenith.
Commercial banks.
Or
financial institutions.
Or other institutions.
Right.
These have been prepared to a set of rules that the central bank has. Note, it also goes, read the second part.
Yes.
It says what? Our opinion is what? Read that part.
So it says that as a result, the consolidated and separate financial statements may not be suitable for another purpose.
Yes.
Our opinion is not modified in respect of this matter.
Thank you.
So they agree with you.
You see, what the issue is simply this. If what KPMG says, these accounts, if KPMG comes to audit me, and he says these accounts are Mugu, I'm not sure about what is happening. It will say I've modified my opinion.
Yeah.
It's very clear. It says
Right.
we have not modified our opinion. Our opinion stays the same.
Right.
We stand by it.
Right.
Except the rules we used were rules not of the complete set of IFRS.
Right.
The complete set of IFRS reporting standards. 'Cause
Standards, yeah.
International Financial Reporting Standards is IFRS.
Right.
But this is a set that is, in a sense, unique to
The central bank.
the central
And
bank.
that's why I talked
But
about-
what I'm also pointing out to you, that only 2 central banks go the full IFRS org. Only 4 even base it on IFRS. The rest don't even bother at all.
Right.
They have their own sets of rules.
Okay.
Whether you agree with those rules or not, it's a different matter. Because what they're saying is that there are significant reasons why we cannot report the same way.
Okay.
And then the auditors go further to say, but the opinion we have offered does not change because of this matter.
Right.
So you can still rely on my opinion.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so we should look at this holistically.
Okay. Right. Now,
Okay.
let them continue. And I want us to end with this. On page 4 of the same audited document, the directors themselves are, and again I quote, the recognition and measurement criteria as set out in the IFRS accounting standards as adopted by the Institute of Chartered Accountants Ghana have not been applied in these circumstances. Right. The directors then disclosed that under Section 7 of the Bank of Ghana Act, foreign exchange revaluation gains and losses on gold, on special drawing rights, and on foreign securities are excluded from the determination of the bank's annual profit or loss. You see, the reason why we keep bringing this matter because it has a direct effect or impact on how we even calculate what exactly constitutes the loss.
Yes.
And that's why I'm raising
good.
this matter again.
Let's
Yes.
list those 3 items. What are
Yes.
they? Number 1,
Yes.
special
So-
drawing rights.
Yes. So special drawing rights. Is so first of all,
Exchange revaluation.
special drawing rights and foreign securities are excluded from the determination of the bank's annual profit loss.
Okay.
So let me read it. Let me read the entire thing. The directors then disclosed that under Section 7 of the Bank of Ghana Act, foreign exchange revaluation gains and losses on gold and special drawing right
Yes.
and on foreign securities are excluded from the determination of the bank's annual profit and loss. They are pushed into other comprehensive income where they affect equity but not the headline loss number.
This is really the biggest departure from IFRS that happens.
Right.
It says that I'm holding large quantities of SDRs, foreign currencies, especially gold in our case,
Right.
and foreign securities. These, because I don't want the volatility, and we could debate this, I don't want the volatility in income from year to year. And because I'm holding it, it's not as if I'm holding it, and so it's about what I'm holding. I exclude those ones from my
P&L.
P&L.
Yeah.
And put them, but they will reflect on their, essentially they will
Comprehensive
reflect
income.
on my balance sheet,
Right.
but not on my P&L.
Right.
Okay.
That's fine.
So long as we are consistent, this is fine.
Okay.
So let's rewind. We've had other years of losses.
Right.
Has this changed? No. I dare say no. You see, one of the rules that is important for all of us is that, for example, we are comparing 2024 loss to to 2025
Yeah.
and saying the loss has.
Oh, you mean the 2022 loss, which is 60 billion?
No, I'm not. I'm saying just even 2024
Right.
to 2025
Right.
to say the loss has gone up. Right. It is important to ask ourselves: is what the rules we are using today, are they consistent with the rules we have used
Over the years.
Right. So that we can be sure we are comparing
Oranges to oranges.
oranges to oranges and not apples to oranges.
Right.
And I dare say that the rules have been consistent.
Okay.
Right? Such that let's not act as if this is the first time this is happening. Or that new rules have been introduced to take us out of a particularly disastrous looking report. In fact, the whole point, and that's very, more, are you with me?
I'm here.
You see, I would have accepted some of the issues if you could say that somewhere in 2025, you introduce new rules so that those new rules could be used in your favor.
Right.
If we have been consistent in our rules, then we can't complain. You can't have your cake. You can't eat your cake and have it. Because the rules have been consistent.
Right.
And it's important in all this that we look at consistency in applying the rules. And I dare say that number one, amongst the globally, only 2 central banks apply IFRS.
We talked about this.
In full.
Right.
Number 2, Ghana actually has a modified IFRS. But of course, you can't take some of the rules and leave some of the rules.
Yeah.
So, but if you go and look at publications about central banks, we are one of the 4 who are closely aligned to IFRS but modified.
Right.
Okay. The rest have their own rules.
Yes.
The other issue is this: that have those rules been consistent? If those rules have been consistent, then we should have been crying foul some years ago.
Right.
Not today.
Right.
Okay. So can we now move on?
So we can. Sure,
we can move on to the issue
can.
of policy solvency.
Yes. So policy. So no, before you talk about the policy solvency, so Gideon Wako on his Facebook wall, he's an economic advisor to Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia.
Yeah.
He talks about, they said, this is the biggest non-crisis loss. Non-crisis, so we don't have crisis. in BOG history. A 15.6 billion loss, which is over 30, so he thinks it's 34 billion cedis in reality without any crisis. He has this way of calculating. It comes back to this whole model of calculation, accounting model. But I think we've dealt with that. Now, he says there has been no crisis to manage since the government took office, so there is no excuse for these losses. No COVID, no banking collapse, no global cost of living crisis, no debt crisis. MBP fixed all the crises by 2024 and left a GDP growth of 5.8%. NDC inherited stability and growth for Forex and are squandering it. They have reversed the recovery plan MPP handed to them. And the MPP losses were falling. And it says now they have spiked. The recovery path has been destroyed in just 1 year. It says C figures, 2023, 13.23 billion. 2024, 9.49 billion. Now 2025, 15.63 billion. He says that is regression. If it continues like this, we may never leave IMF program or return quickly by 2028. What do you make of this? We don't have a crisis. So why did we have to aggressively bring the CD, aggressively appreciate the CD? That's the point. That's the question he's asking. We don't have any crisis. We're fine.
The question you have to ask is, when you say you don't have a crisis,
Yes.
were we out of the crisis?
Well,
were we out of a crisis?
No,
we were not.
There's still a fall after the DDP, isn't it?
Yes, and there's a critical. You see, sometimes I ask the question. Assume I'm the man in the street. And I'll come back to being a finance person. But assume I'm the man in the street. What do I appreciate more? A loss of the central bank, and as much as that is in context very problematic. Let's not use this to say that the loss in itself is not problematic.
Right.
It is problematic. But let's also be clear in our minds that for the ultimate person in the street, CD at 14, CD at 10.5, which one do they appreciate?
I think the latter, obviously.
Good. For me, in the financial sector, rates where they were and rates today, which one do I appreciate?
Today's rate, obviously.
Thank you.
Yes.
So, and we could go on and on and on. Some of the things don't even make a difference to. So, for the man in the street,
You left out inflation.
inflation is a very it's a very murky concept, because you see, what happens is that even though inflation has fallen, it is the prices, the rate of increase that has fallen.
Slow down.
So for the man in the street, he's still facing some pricing increment too. So be careful when you go.
And that's why they say, sorry, I was inflation. I was 2 cities, and obviously 2 cities, one
you notice I say that, I say clear, because inflation itself is
tricky.
It's tricky.
It's very tricky.
It's tricky. And you'll be surprised that even seasoned economists, when they meet the man in the street, they struggle to explain why. I didn't see there 50, about 20, and then let me see if you must still quietly.
So I now understand why you left it out. When you're talking about what matters to the man on the street.
Because what matters to the man? Because the man on the street will quickly count. As for the dollar, he can feel it and see it. As for the what do you call it? The inflation, you say, "Sam, Papa, can see now you be cancer."
And of course, they will feel the cost of borrowing. The cost of borrowing.
When I talk about the cost of borrowing, I've now moved from the ordinary man to the business.
The business, okay.
To the business. And you see, I also stayed away from talking about high net worth individuals, because they will not agree with me.
Yeah, I know.
Because they will tell me, my depositors are telling me, why are the rates so low? So let's be clear about the constituencies I'm talking about.
Right.
I'm talking about the man in the street,
and
I'm talking about the business.
The business.
And so when you look at this in its generality, and you think, and here inflation, see, the stabilization of the CD is a very critical thing, because the CD is interesting, because the CD is the biggest pass-through back to inflation.
True.
So there's a very symbiotic, dynamic relationship between inflation, because we import a lot of things. When the CD comes down, you actually find inflation also one of the first things that are affected.
Yes.
But back to these issues.
Okay.
My point is that if you take the average Ghanaian and you say, I spent less than 2% of all the money we all generated, our GDP, so that you could get these benefits, what would they say?
We'll be happy.
And that's, you see, and it's important that we address both constituencies. We address that constituency, and then we also address, as the finance committee say, hey, central bank, if it was a subordinate, regulated agency that was this insolvent, you would have issued a prompt corrective action.
Right.
So,
this is saying that.
so maybe we ought to discuss this issue of the losses.
Yeah.
And to say that the biggest issue is that long term, these losses are not sustainable.
But the Bank of Ghana itself recognizes, and that's why it tells you that there's all kinds of reforms happening.
Thank you.
And there's actually a policy shift.
Yes.
So
no, but that comes to the issue of policy solvency.
Thank you.
Because you see, policy solvency says that given its revenue streams, and our expectation of what is about to happen, will it be making enough money to pay for its core operations? Will it be making money enough so that over the next few years we could expect that it could absorb these losses that it is at one were there before 2025
Right.
and were increased in 2025? You know the answer I gave to that?
Okay.
They are solvent, but it's tight. They're solvent,
But it's tight.
but it's tight. Because
No breathing space.
there's very little
breathing space.
And there's a very critical, what we did over the weekend was to look at modeling policy solvency and what the issues are and where their revenue is coming from. And we realized that there are certain critical assumptions. The most important one is this, that inflation shouldn't shoot up again. And so that on the fiscal side, the side that is the expenditure of the government, it shouldn't take any somersaults. Otherwise, that policy solvency, that is there for now, but it is very tight, could take a somersault. That's number one. Number two is that the exchange rate is still critical,
Right.
to this process. And in our best case scenario, we don't see these losses being absorbed in anything less than 4 years. But for now, is when you look at the revenue streams, is the policy solvency, which is that, let me give you as an example. Moro owes money.
Yeah.
Right? But can we reasonably expect that the income Moro will get will pay for his expenses this year?
Yeah.
And maybe leave some to start to cushion reduce the money he owes.
Yeah, exactly.
And the answer simply is that for the central bank, it is yes. Just like it could be for your case.
Okay.
But things are tight tomorrow. If anything goes wrong, if you go and spend some money doing some fancy things, you know,
You'll be in trouble.
You could be in trouble.
Yes.
So here's the thing, right?
Right.
My submission is that, are they solvent? Yes. Is it tight?
Very.
Very tight. And they need to watch inflation like a hawk. And they need to watch what is happening on the Ministry of Finance end very carefully. Because should inflation take a somersault, we're in trouble.
Right.
The more difficult one, though, is this. What if the shock is external?
Wow.
Then we run into trouble. So if I was being kind to the governor, I'll be kneeling down in the morning and praying, Charlie, Trump, solve this Middle East war, because, you know, I love this proverb. It's an Akan proverb, so I'll say it in Akan, and I know Prof will understand it. Then I will translate it for you and the rest of your listeners also. Kitso, nkisi moko, uma akar, no one children. You know what it means?
Yes.
The lizard goes to eat its pepper, and the frog starts to sweat. Trump has gone to eat his pepper. Now look at us in Ghana here. Now we're discussing how that external shock will give us a somersault.
Yes.
That is the problem.
Right.
If the shock is external, then we don't, you know, it's easy for me to say watch inflation, because after all, inflation is the central bank's own mandate. I can say keep an eye on the government, because you are the government's banker.
Right.
So you should be coordinating with them and making sure that you don't grant them any deficit financing.
Right.
But if the shock is external, that one, I don't know how the central bank is going to. So here's the point.
Okay.
Right. I've seen all sorts of definitions about policy solvency. And I really say the issue is fairly simple.
Okay.
Well, it's income, and we have analysis of the income, right? There could be an issue to say your income is very dependent on gold, or the net gain from sales of refined gold.
Right.
And if anything happened to that, you could also be running into trouble. But so yeah, that's why it is tight. But at the heart, for now, it is solvent.
Okay.
And remember that if it wasn't policy solvent,
Okay.
then the going concern issue would not be valid. And so we would expect, you see, I also operate from this angle that when you tell me KPMG has audited.
PENDREAM TV ase. Now, so far so good. Say open online portal e Ghana. Nipa share, nipa follow, nipa comment here. To my best of knowledge, without any biases, PENDREAM TV.